The firefighters arrived at the scene of a car accident and found a car over an embankment. A man was trapped underneath the trailer that the car was towing. He looked seriously injured. A woman shouted for them to save her husband. She also said that her daughter Elena was still trapped inside the car. The firefighters immediately took action. Mills wrapped a sling around the frame. Tony got the winch cable ready. Crews started cutting the frame with a saw. Then they lifted the trailer. The man was finally rescued. They quickly transported him to the hospital. Meanwhile, Kelly and another firefighter were attached to the cable and climbed down the hill to rescue Elena. They turned off the car engine first. Then Kelly calmed the frightened Elena. Elena slowly crawled out of the car. Kelly held her and with the firefighters' coordination brought her safely back up. Two Blimp pilots headed for the stadium. Suddenly there was a loud bang. The pilot turned to look. Their engine exploded and the elevation wheel was disabled. Subsequently, various functions failed one after another. Then the Blimp plunged downward, emitting thick smoke. And to make matters worse, ahead lay a football stadium with 20,000 people. In the face of crisis, the pilot hastily dialed 911. Soon after, fire trucks raced to the scene. But at this point, the Blimp was out of control and unable to evade. Seeing this, the audiences were too shocked to flee.
I can't pull up!
Come on, guys! Come on! You can make it a little bit further!
We're not gonna make it! Brace for impact!
The stadium instantly descended into chaos. After realizing the situation, they began to flee desperately, but just then a man noticed a girl with a bomb strapped to her.
She's got a bomb!
The crowd became even more chaotic. The Blimp perched on the scaffolding as it teetered back and forth. The firefighters upon arrival were stunned by the scene. Two firefighters went to cut off the power. Then they operated the aerial ladder to begin the rescue. Meanwhile, the cop also arrived to maintain order. The man informed her about the bomb. The cop hurried to check.
It's not a bomb. It's my heart. Please, find my mom.
She opened the backpack and indeed found a medical device. She took a photo and quickly sent it to dispatch Maddie. Maddie confirmed it was indeed an artificial heart pneumatic pump. At this point, the girl's pulse weakened and she lost consciousness. But what's worse, the pneumatic pump was running low on power. The girl's heartbeat was rapidly fading. The cop hurried to find the girl's mother. Meanwhile, the firefighters successfully extinguished the fire. Then they pried open the cabin door to begin the rescue. But the Blimp was swaying violently and on the verge of collapse. The firefighters had to be extremely careful. Luckily, they all escaped unharmed in the end. Meanwhile, the cop found the girl's mother. Under Maddie's guidance, the cop connected the catheter and replaced the battery. As time passed by second, the girl finally regained consciousness.
She's breathing.
This was definitely the most absurd wedding ever. Two complete strangers brought together by experts, met for the first time at their own wedding. As the bride slowly walked down the aisle, the groom standing at the altar grew extremely nervous. But what he never expected was, at the very moment the bride stepped onto the stage,
Hi.
Michael suddenly rolled his eyes back and collapsed straight to the ground. Paramedics quickly arrived at the scene. At that moment, Michael had just regained consciousness. He tried to get up, but Hen stopped him. During the initial checkup, Hen had discovered something unusual, but before she could explain, Michael suddenly passed out again. The atmosphere instantly became tense. The captain asked what was going on. Hen explained that when she checked Michael's left side, she couldn't hear a heartbeat. At the same time, she also couldn't find his spleen on the left side of his abdomen. There is a rare condition where a person's organs are reversed, positioned in the opposite locations from normal. Michael was one of those rare individuals. He had fainted due to extreme nervousness, which caused his blood pressure to spike and his heart to become congested. But what no one expected was, as the paramedics were working to save Michael, the bride Alyssa suddenly burst into tears. Yet she wasn't crying for her unconscious groom. She was crying out of fear that she would become a widow on her wedding day. Luckily, with the paramedics' efforts, Michael's heartbeat was successfully restored. They quickly rushed him to the hospital. The next day, after recovering and being discharged, Michael wanted to continue his unfinished wedding, but little did he know, by then the bride's eyes had already locked onto another man. The paramedics Sylvie and Dawson got a phone call to a seedy part of town. A guy had overdosed in the street. While they were trying to take care of him, they were surrounded by junkies. Two men tried to steal their needles. The situation started to get out of control. Just then the fire truck arrived and the firefighters scared the junkies away. The guy on the ground woke up. Sylvie said, "You're all right, we just gave you a shot of naloxone." He groaned and said, "Oh man, I want my high back." When the firefighter said they were taking him to the hospital, the man freaked out and ran away.
Well, I'm certainly not gonna chase him down.
While they were leaving, Sylvie revealed that she lived right around the corner in the ghetto. Dawson was shocked.
Hey Hector, do me a favor and don't urinate in the entryway anymore. Use the alley.
Sylvie gave her a tour of her house. Dawson saw a huge stack of $100 bills on the counter. Sylvie said she just hadn't set up a checking account yet. What to do if you break a bone in the wilderness with a dead phone? Judd and his son Wyatt were having a conversation in the wilderness that day. Suddenly, Judd noticed a rattlesnake on the ground. Just as the horse panicked, the rattlesnake struck. Unfortunately, Judd was thrown hard to the ground by the frightened horse. Luckily, the rattlesnake did not attack again. However, Judd's situation was far from good. In Wyatt's terrified gaze, Judd realized that his leg bone was protruding. To prevent himself from passing out, Judd slowed his breathing. Then he instructed Wyatt to take out the tools they carried. Wyatt cut the jeans and took off the boot so that Judd could clearly assess the injury. Judd noticed that the artery was not damaged. The situation was still under control. Next, they had to check the blood flow. Wyatt found that the pulse in Judd's foot had stopped. At the same time, Judd could no longer feel Wyatt's touch. This was caused by the broken bone pressing against the artery. He needed Wyatt to reset the bone so the artery wouldn't be obstructed and the blood could flow again. Wyatt did it. Judd passed out. When Judd woke up again, he found that Wyatt had already bandaged his wound carefully. At that moment, a passing car happened to drive by. Judd was rescued and his leg was saved. 911 dispatcher Grace took a call from a woman, Kristen, ordering pizza. She thought Kristen had dialed the wrong number. Kristen said she hadn't and immediately gave her address. Grace instantly realized it was a distress call. She quickly locked in on Kristen's location and notified the nearest officers to respond. She then asked Kristen what size pizza she wanted. Kristen replied that a medium one would be fine as it was just her and her ex-husband Andrew. Grace understood the hidden message and began searching for Andrew's records. She found out that he had been arrested multiple times for assault and had recently been released from prison. Grace asked Kristen if Andrew had a weapon. If he did, she should request extra pepperoni. Kristen glanced at the handgun and said she wanted extra pepperoni. However, Andrew grew impatient when Kristen took too long to order. Kristen quickly told Grace to send the pizza as fast as possible. Grace understood her situation and assured her that the delivery was already on the way. She told Kristen that it would arrive in 2 minutes and advised her to stay as far away from the door as possible. Meanwhile, Grace identified Kristen's apartment floor. However, a muffled yelp was heard and Andrew grabbed Kristen by the neck saying, "Nice try." Grace stalled him, saying that her grandmother always told her when God closes a door, he opens a window.
Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith.
Kristen immediately understood Grace's hint. She broke free, ran to the window, and jumped out, landing safely on a big airbag that fire and rescue had set up for her. Andrew tried to escape, but it was too late. Carlos and other officers burst in and cuffed him. The firefighters were called to an abandoned lot. They rushed to the scene and found 2 men about 10 feet below ground working on gas line pipes. The men were unconscious because of the gas leak. The narrow passage could only fit one person, so they sent Mills down to bring up the men. Mills put on his gear, grabbed an oxygen mask, and rappelled down. Soon both victims were successfully rescued. Just as the team was about to pull Mills back up, he suddenly passed out and became unconscious. They tried to pull him up, but his cable was caught on a rock. At this critical moment, Lieutenant Casey used a pole to loosen the cable. He tried several times but failed. Fortunately, he finally succeeded. They quickly got Mills above ground. They woke him up and asked him what had happened. He had no idea. He said it got hard to breathe and then he blacked out. They thought his mask might have malfunctioned because he was upside down. Back at the firehouse, Mills asked Cap if he had checked the breathing equipment. Cap said he had, but he hadn't found any issues. So what actually happened to Mills down there? The old woman had been deceased for several days. However, her son believed she was still alive and called for paramedic, saying his mother hadn't been eating much lately and her complexion had worsened significantly, so he suspected she might be ill. But as soon as the paramedic entered the room, they smelled a putrid odor and discovered that the woman lying in bed had been dead for some time. Yet the man continued to introduce the paramedic, completely unaware that his mother had passed away. The paramedic had to inform the man of the situation, but the man couldn't accept this fact, insisting that his mother was merely sleeping and urged them to check her immediately. The paramedic suspected the man had a mental illness, so she had his team contact the county coroner's office, while also sending a mental health unit over. However, at that moment, the man suddenly grabbed a sword from behind and told everyone that no one was allowed to leave until his mother woke up. Seeing this, the paramedic tried to reason with him, but the man's attitude was firm. Helplessly, they pretended to examine the old woman, then said she had a weak pulse and needed a defibrillator, mentioned that they needed to remove her clothes before shocking her and asked him to turn away. He obeyed and silently prayed for his mother's safety. However,
To Trevor.
the teammate also took away his sword. At that moment, he was still concerned about his mother's well-being.
There isn't anything anyone can do for her now.
I promised to take care of her.
And you did.
You fought for her. In the end, that's all we can do.